This might be the only video you ever need in order to learn how to control energy in your life. Not because it's going to hand you a shortcut, although it will allow you to create more quickly what you want, but because it shows you where the real power has been hiding all along. Most people chase magic pills, tricks, and shortcuts when it comes to this. Or they push, strive, and force things when it comes to their lives. All trying to make reality bend to their will, only to be confused when nothing seems to stick. They then ask why change doesn't seem to last if it comes in at all, or why some invisible wall keeps pulling them back into the same loops and patterns and results. Now there's a reason for that. A reason why your life doesn't shift even when you do have a clear intention. A reason why certain outcomes seem to slip through your fingers time and time again, no matter how hard you focus or try. And it may not be that you lack discipline, clarity, or even desire. It's that there is something deeper, something that most people never even learn about, let alone work with. Now, energy isn't just some nebulous idea. It's something that's all around you, all around us, that you're constantly shaping with every thought, every feeling, every unconscious reaction. But you don't have to keep doing it blindly. There is a way to step out of the chaos, a way to stop reacting and start directing the outcomes of your life powerfully. Now in this video, we're going beyond surface level manifestation advice, beyond mindset and beyond hustle. This is the full guide. Not everyone is ready for it, but if you felt the pull, if something in you knows there's more to this, more to you, then keep watching. Because once you see what's underneath it all, you won't look at energy or your own role in reality and the creation of it the same ever again. So the first thing we need to understand is why even go through the process of learning how to control energy in our lives? Why even make the effort? Well, the big reason is that our reality is energy at the end of the day. It's fundamental stuff that makes up our reality is energy. Like Nikola Tesla famously said, if you want to know the secrets to the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. All things that are non-physical. He didn't say focus on the physical. He was basically pointing towards the non-physical, the energy, frequency, and vibration. However, most people are sleepwalking through life, unconsciously reacting to everything, and so their energy is going all over the place, and then they wonder why they're not creating what they want in their life. You see, when you don't consciously direct the energy in your life, you are allowing it to go to places that create a lot of struggle and strife that most people are experiencing on a day-to-day. You see, it's now being confirmed that reality is actually mainly energy and empty space, and only a tiny fraction of what we call physical. In fact, it is 99.9+% empty space and energy, and that is even a more conservative estimate. It could be even higher than that. And so we very much live in a non-physical universe, even though we do have a physical side to us and are presenting in this what we call physical way. But keep in mind that everything that you see around you is energy. Yet when most people go to change their lives, they focus on the physical. They try and bend the physical reality to their will rather than doing what's actually going to be effective, which is what we're going to be going over today. If you change your energy, you will change your life. This is law. This is not something that works for some people. It's something that will work for anyone that begins to apply it and sticks with it. Now, why is it if you change your energy, you will change your life? And so what I want you to do is to think of it this way. Imagine we have this pole, and contained in this pole is every mode of vibration in existence. So everything is on this pole. At the top of the pole, there is pure energy and spirit in its kind of most fundamental, simplest, kind of purest form. And at the bottom is matter. And it goes from all forms of matter to the densest, grossest form of matter. Now, even though spirit and energy at its purest form and matter show up and express themselves in very different ways because of their mode of vibration, they are actually of a like kind or made of the same stuff, just vibrating at a different degree. Again, the more dense the vibration, the more things become more and more physical to that grossest form of matter, that most dense form of matter. And the faster and faster the vibration, the more it starts moving up that scale towards more pure energy and whatever else we want to call it. Again, spirit we're using interchangeably here. And so everything that you see in your life is made up of energy. Everything, even the physical stuff, is actually at its core energy. It's just a rate of vibration that's showing up in the particular way it's showing up because it's a denser rate of vibration. If you were to increase the vibration of the thing somehow, it would go to say that it would actually leave physical form and as it goes up that pole. So this is why it's so paramount for us to learn how to control energy in our lives. Because if we're not controlling it and it's just going in any old direction, what kind of physical matter reality are we creating for yourself? Because an idea I want you to keep in mind is that your reality, your physical reality, is simply an energetic history. Again, physicality is a denser, slower rate of vibration. It takes longer for energy to accumulate in a way that brings about certain physical stuff or attracts that stuff into your life. Meaning, the longer you dwell upon something energetically, which we'll talk about what that is emotionally and your thoughts as well, the longer you're in a certain space when it comes to that, the more you will attract the physical equivalent through accumulating enough energy. Once you have enough particle flow, we could call it. And so what you're seeing in your physical life is very much an energetic history. You could also call it an inner world history made up of the spirit and the mental. To keep it very simple, you can think of that as your thoughts and your emotions, which emotions we can break down to energy in motion. And there's that key word again, energy. So a lot of your physical reality is an energetic history based on what you've been thinking about and feeling about most of the time, and how you have been moving in the physical world, actionizing those things as well. So again, if you don't take control of this process, which is 100% your responsibility to do, you'll most likely get hooked into a negative space, which will create more negativity in your life. So you're creating either way. There is no switching off your creatorship or your ability to create. Even if you decide to opt out or not control the energy in your life, it still affects you and you're still creating. Now you're just creating unconsciously, and you're kind of like a little paper boat on the ocean, just being swayed by the current of life without having any direction that you're inputting into your journey or that you're directing. You can kind of think of it like this. When people go and don't learn this and actually take responsibility and start moving in the ways that they want to create what they want in their lives, it's as if they are a ship out at sea, but there's no captain and no crew. It's just being thrown around by the ocean in any old direction, and then you'll go in any old direction. And because our planet at the moment has more of a negative sway in the collective, because there's a lot of negative programming and stuff like that, if you aren't consciously creating, someone absolutely will hijack your ship and then take it to where they want to go, and they'll essentially use your own ability to create against yourself if you're not taking the wheel. When you start doing this, it's now like you've put your own captain and crew on the ship, moving in the direction that you want and creating what you want in your life. If you learn to control the energy in your life, which starts from yourself, you will start seeing new and improved opportunities and outcomes presenting themselves in your life. You'll know exactly how to start creating your reality consciously each time, every time. There is really not much more that is crucial than this when it comes to your ability to create. So let's now jump into how you can actually do this. So we are going to keep this very simple and practical, because could you go out there and do a million different energy practices, and would that provide you with some good results? Absolutely. However, at the end of the day, a lot of it comes down to how you are directing your thoughts and your emotions. A lot of those practices are essentially aiming to help you do this, to be able to control your thoughts better and to also be able to redirect, or I should say direct, your emotions or your energy in motion and help it dwell in certain places and to draw upon certain things that are going to help you do that. So why is it so powerful to make sure we're getting into a place where we're able to control our thoughts more? And understand, when I say control your thoughts, I'm not just talking about you producing thoughts, being able to step back and think about what you want. I'm also talking about you being able to filter the thoughts that you entertain, because you're not just getting thoughts from yourself. You're not just creating those thoughts out of the abyss. Sometimes you are, but a lot of times you're also picking up on thoughts that your antenna, let's just say, is picking up on. Let's say you're like a radio station and you're picking up on the frequencies that apply to that radio station, and you then have a choice to accept or to reject the thought, whatever it is. And a lot of people just accept all comers, anything that comes in, and so every negative thought, every kind of opinion, everything they just accept in without having the ability to discern what is it that I want to focus on and what isn't. So when we're talking about what you think about, we're also talking about what thoughts you entertain, what thoughts you let into your home versus which thoughts you create boundaries around and go, that's not what I want in my life. So why this is so important, and I mention this all the time in videos, but it's always good to reiterate, is that you are a three-part being. And this is a simplified version of looking at this, but this allows us to make it usable. And you can think of it like you are a physical being. And again, I'm sure all of you can believe that. You can see that you are physical, that at a certain level of context, even if you want to get woo-woo and be like, well, I'm actually just spirit at the end of the day. What about the top of the pole? Yeah, there's different perspectives, different contexts, and different lenses in which we look through. And this is where you get like divine dichotomies and all this kind of stuff as well, because depending on the context and the way you look at something, one thing could be true in one scenario and something else that seems contradictory also be true, right? And so when we're looking at, though, we're in a physical reality, right? There is a part of it that is physical. We live physical lives. It is not what most of reality consists of, but it would be silly to throw that out because it's a part of the process and it is something that we're doing, and there's a reason to it. It's not redundant. You know, nature doesn't waste energy or do things just for the hell of it. There is a divine process and fine-tuned mathematical universe in which we are living in. So just want to get that out of the way. But you have this physical part of yourself, so we know that, and that's what most people have grown up believing is all they are for the most part, and everything else is kind of hokey or woo-woo, and we're just physical. But like I mentioned, the physical part of the universe is actually a tiny fraction. And actually, the physical part of your existence derives from the energetic part. Right? And so like famous physicists like Max Planck, Werner Heisenberg, Niels Bohr, Nikola Tesla, all these guys would say is that the physical world is actually derivative from consciousness, which we can replace here with energy. We could put spirit in there. And so it is coming from those things. And so when we only focus on the physical part of ourselves, we limit how we can change ourselves because we can only work with the physical. But when we tap into these other two parts of yourself and activate what's known as the inner world, we suddenly gain more access to that 99.9+% that I mentioned earlier. That is what most of our reality is made up of. And again, if you're accessing that and more possibility, you can now suddenly bring the unknown into the known. Rather than being in the physical and trying to make more known from what's already here, it's kind of like you have building materials and you need more materials to complete whatever you're building, but you're just trying to continually build with what you've got. Accessing the inner world is what allows us to basically order or call upon more materials to help us with whatever we are doing. So anyway, with that out of the way, you have these two other parts of you. One is the mental side of you. This is a non-physical aspect of yourself. Like I said, you have thoughts. You entertain certain thoughts that come in. You have visualizations. You imagine. You daydream. All these kinds of things that are processes of the mental side of you. But then you also have the spirit. Again, that highest part of the pole we talked about, spirit and energy part of yourself. Now, this part of yourself is the connection to all, right? This is the connection to whatever you want to call it. The label is not important, whichever resonates with you. God, source, the collective consciousness system, infinite intelligence, you know, the information field. There's so many different names. It doesn't really matter, but this is the part of you that is connected to the whole, and then you're showing up as this individuation of the whole. But this is what allows you to connect to that place. And again, it is also the energetic or emotional side of yourself. So you activate this part of yourself a lot of time through feeling. Now, feeling we are using here with energy and emotion, and it is especially this part of ourselves that when we learn how to control, we learn to control the feelings, the emotions, the energy in our life. That is what begins to shape our outer reality based on, again, what we're entertaining and dwelling upon there. Now, a huge reason for this is because of something known as the law of balance and harmony. Now, this is the predominant, one of the main laws, or I should say again, the predominant law of the universe. And so to explain this, I'm going to play a clip where I go over how you can use this law to literally influence the cells in your body in order to activate this law and change things in your life. And hopefully this will present a lot of aha moments for you. And if it does, I would absolutely recommend capturing them and writing them down. But I'm going to play you this clip now that explains the law of balance, why it's so crucial what you do on the mental and spirit part of yourself if you want to change things in your life. Again, change your energy, change your life. So I'm going to play that now. Now, what I want to go over next is how you can actually change your identity, change yourself at the cellular level in order to start bringing about that which you actually want in your life. And I think you're going to really enjoy this and hopefully really appreciate how powerful this can be. And this is how we're going to use the law of balance in our favor in order to start having certain things flying in. This is what we help people do. And I'm going to give you some of the roadmap on how to do this yourself. Now, when you're experiencing a certain emotion, typically it's the byproduct of certain thoughts you've been having. You know, you might think an angry thought and bada bing, bada boom, you start feeling angry. In fact, next time you notice you're in a more negative emotion, you can test this out for yourself. Just pause and monitor what you're thinking about. you're going to find that you're probably thinking about something that's fairly negative as well, and it's activating that emotion. Essentially, our emotions are an amazing guide to let us know what we're thinking about. When we feel good, it usually means we're on course to actually bring about what it is we want. But when we feel bad or negatively, it's usually because we are thinking negative thoughts. And so I would encourage you to use your emotional guidance system to become aware of what you're thinking about. So every thought you are thinking starts to produce a chemical in you through these feelings. Again, like I mentioned, when you have angry thoughts, how do you feel? You feel pretty angry. Now, the cells that are in your body are constantly adapting to the feelings that you're giving it, to the emotions that you are allowing to course through your body on a consistent basis. And so if you're always in, say, anger, they are going to adapt to an angry environment. You see, cells essentially have skin around them called receptor sites that essentially adapts to the weather you are consistently giving them. And the weather is simply the biochemical climate that your thoughts are producing. So what weather are you producing inside the body for your cells to adapt to? To keep it very simple, positive emotions, positive thoughts are creating, let's say, a sunny, pleasant climate for your cells, while negative thoughts are producing, harsher environments like rain and snow and bitter cold. So your cells essentially are going to adapt to the biochemical climate that you consistently produce over time. Now here's where the magic can happen, because when you start to produce a new biochemical climate, a new weather pattern for your cells to adapt to. So let's say you were negative and now you're producing a sunny climate. You're producing a more sunny, positive climate, biochemical climate for your cells because you're thinking positively, feeling positively most of the time. What ends up happening is counterbalancing forces in the universe become activated because you're now actually out of balance. Because of your newly adapted cells, if you stick with this long enough, these forces have to come in and again adhere to the law of balance and harmony. Now, how are these balancing forces going to be applied? Well, there's actually only two things pretty much that can happen when you do this. So remember, you had let's say if it was a more negative biochemical climate for your cells, that was normal and everything was balanced and you probably saw similar things in your outer world that matched that. But now you've changed the climate. And so your cells have changed, they've adapted to this new climate, but your outer world hasn't adapted yet because it's slower. So one of two things are going to happen. Either your physical world by law is going to have to change to match your cells, to match your new inner world. It's going to have to bring you people and opportunities and circumstances and events that you can act upon in order to match the new biochemical climate that your cells have adapted to. The second way it balances is you revert back to the old climate so that it matches your current physical circumstances, which at that point are still going to be more from the old climate or what we could consider negative. Those are the only two ways to balance out. And guess what? The universe doesn't care which way it balances out. It is just concerned with balancing it out. And so if you stick with it long enough, you stick to that biochemical climate, you keep feeding your cells that so they adapt to that environment, your physical will begin to change to match that. What happens with most people is they maybe do this for a little bit, they don't have guidance or coaching, or they don't have something that's, keeps them stuck with it. So when something kind of difficult comes in, they kind of back off and then the results go back down. But if you don't do that, you stay in the chaos, you stay calm in the storm. The storm dissipates and suddenly a new physical environment has been created because your cells stayed in that new adapted weather or in that new biochemical climate instead of you reverting back to a negative one. So essentially, if you maintain a new inner climate for long enough and don't stop when the balancing forces come in, you can literally have universal forces come in and shift your reality in massive positive ways. Essentially, your job is going to be to put yourself out of balance so your cells are living in the place and time where your goal has already happened, and then you have to just allow the physical to catch up through the law of balance and balancing forces. Okay, so now you have a better idea of why it's so crucial if we want to be, again, the master of our destiny, if we want to mold our lives in the ways that we want, if we want to be the deliberate and conscious creator, which is your divine right to be, but you have to step up to the plate. You have to step into that role and take it on. If you want to be the king of your kingdom, you have to put on the crown. You can't be hiding away in the shadows or the corners. If you want to be the star of your movie, you can't be pushing other people into the spotlight role in your own movie and trying to play, a background character. You have to take on the responsibility of that. And when we do this, this is when we allow ourselves to become the deliberate conscious creator. We don't leave it up to someone else, come fix my life. We take 100% responsibility for our creation. This is why you hear things like you get what you think about, and I throw feel about most of the time, because what you're thinking about is what's activating in the mental plane, which is also going to help you with what you're feeling, because there's correspondence. For example, if you think of things that are very loving, you're probably going to feel love in response to that, unless you have certain blocks or other things that you need to work through. I call it releasing energetic anchors, which I have videos on. But ultimately, you get what you think about and feel about most of the time, because those are the things that are then going to bounce on the physical if you stay there long enough. Again, when you're dwelling on certain things at the higher end of the pole, it'll eventually create its equivalent in the physical form. It just takes time. There's a lag period between the energetic world or the quantum world to the physical world, or we could call it the Newtonian world, the world of Newtonian physics. This is why you will hear certain quotes like "the feeling is the secret" from Neville Goddard, or "assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled." And you'll hear it said in many other different ways as well, all driving the same point home. Why? Because it is one of your most powerful tools of creation, where you are allowing your feeling to go. What emotions are you entertaining? What are you activating in that inner part of yourself, in the spirit? And again, these two always play off each other, the mental and the spirit. So does the physical. Everything's in correspondence, actually. But when you feel better, you think better. When you think better, you feel better. And if you use that to your advantage to make sure you're continually dwelling in kind of those higher thoughts and higher emotions that are going to bring about, again, equivalent physical results, opportunities, and so on. So this being said, tools that help you feel better and access higher feelings more often are always a benefit and increase your ability to create. So I'm going to give you some of those today, and I'm going to keep it very simple so that these are easy to stick to. When it comes to all this, don't get lost in the complication of it all. It really isn't that complex. Again, at the end of the day, so much of this is getting us back to the idea of what are we thinking about and what are we feeling, right? When you master that inner world game and kind of master the fundamentals here, your ability to create goes through the roof, and you will start seeing the effects or the results of doing that. So we don't need to do all these complex things that, sound really cool. Again, you can if you resonate with those things and it's working for you, but ultimately understand, if you get to the point where, again, you're thinking about what you want, you're thinking about things that are at a higher level of thought and feeling higher level emotions or higher conscious level emotions, then you will start creating more deliberately. You are now controlling the energy in your life a lot more. You're directing it in the ways you want to go. And keep in mind, even if you don't take conscious control of this process, which is your birthright to do, by the way, it's still happening. Things are still being activated regardless. And so actually, to explain that a little bit, there's a concept known as infinite action, and I believe this comes from Manly P. Hall, which he has an incredible story. He's someone who was a 33rd degree Mason, but he became a 33rd degree Mason intentionally to learn the secrets and to be able to share some of what happened. And I believe it took him like 19 or 20 years to get to that point. And a 33rd degree Mason is one of the highest designations in Freemasonry. Now, there might be designations beyond that are more secretive and aren't public knowledge, but it still, again, took him 19 years to get to that level. And he talked about an idea known as infinite action that they learned about. And what this is they were basically explaining, again, in these societies that had access to superior knowledge, that had access to how reality is really working. And this stuff dates back, thousands of years. We can take us back to ancient Egyptian mystery schools and things of that nature, where some of the brightest minds would study at these schools, by the way, for higher knowledge and the ability to create and all these different things. And what it goes over is that you're in this thing called infinite action all the time. And what it means is, like I said, you're always creating. You are always sending out this signal that then is being reflected back to you. Remember the law of balance, right? You're always sending this thing out, and then life will balance based on whatever it is you are sending out. The outer world will balance to match the inner world after enough time. Because again, the outer world, just denser rate of vibration, takes a little more time, more concentrated particle flow for that to start balancing. And the contents of this infinite action, to make it very simple, is the contents of your thoughts and the contents of your emotions. Again, your physical actions also give off energy, by the way. But when you're thinking and you're feeling in this higher place, guess what kind of actions you'll be taking, right? Guess what kind of inspired things will start coming through that you'll then be taking action on. Guess what kind of ideas will start coming through? Solutions start presenting themselves, right? And so the makeup of all of that is sending out this signal 24/7. You are always creating through this signal. It is infinite action. You are always in infinite action. We have been taught, especially in the West, that, we kind of, our thoughts are to ourselves, right? And what we visualize and the images and our feelings, we can hide those. We can keep them to ourselves, but you really can't, nor should you want to, because what you're thinking and what you're feeling is contributing massively to this signal you are sending out and is creating in your life. So maybe other people may not be able to hear the contents of your thoughts, and some people get very good at hiding what that is, but you can't trick the universe. You can't trick source or God or the infinite intelligence. You can't do it. It doesn't care what you say or what you are presenting externally. It is more concerned with what you are doing internally in the inner world. And so infinite action we can use to our advantage to understand, it is really important to make sure I'm monitoring the content of my thoughts and training myself to, again, filter the ones I don't want in there, almost like a bouncer at the club who's like, no, you can't come in if you're negative or whatever else, but it's allowing everything that serves you and what you're trying to do in. Right? Same with the emotions. So infinite action will show us the content of your emotions and thinking 24/7 is being sent out and is a huge component of your creation. Now understand, there are many things out there that aim to hijack your emotions and thoughts. And if you are not deliberately controlling it yourself, you actually open yourself up to these attacks, which then take your thoughts and emotions to a more lower conscious place. Unless you've already built the subconscious or unconscious patterns to automatically let in the thoughts and emotions that you want to entertain, you may have noticed that if you're not being conscious and you go unconscious, you go to a pretty negative place most of the time. A lot of people do, where people will catastrophize, they think of the worst possible outcomes, they think of problems and all these other things. They're not usually thinking about, what are all the possibilities that can happen here? Or they're thinking about what they're grateful for or whatever else. You can train yourself to this point if you keep going here, which is ultimately when you know you're getting to a level of mastery, because if you train yourself to do this all the time, then what will you be sending out through infinite action automatically? Well, some really good stuff that's going to help you create a lot in your life. But until we get to this, we need to consciously wake up more often, take control of the process, and monitor our thoughts. So now we will cover some exercises on how to do this, how to control your thoughts and feelings more effectively, along with some other tools that will help you tap into energy very powerfully. Well, we can call this source energy to assist you. But first, I want to go over one of the most profound bodies of works when it comes to this that's going to deepen your understanding. One of the most profound and impactful bodies of work I have ever been introduced to and came across was a body of work by someone named David Hawkins. Now, you may have heard of him if you do letting go exercises, because he literally created a book called Letting Go, which is incredibly valuable. But he also created another book called Power versus Force, and actually many other books. But this one described what's called the different levels of consciousness. And throughout his whole career, David Hawkins actually calibrated different levels of consciousness and was able to map it out so that it was usable and understandable and applicable in our own lives. Now, this map was calibrated, passing the scientific burden of proof, and gives us so many clear insights into why we want to be more deliberate with our thoughts and energies. And so what David Hawkins discovered is that there are higher levels of consciousness and lower levels of consciousness. Now, understand that doesn't mean good or bad. It just means there are certain levels of consciousness that, when activated, express certain things and bring about certain results. And then there are other levels that have different consequences, right? It doesn't mean morally good or bad. It just gives us a roadmap to look at, to be like, where are we in this map and how can I move further up it? Because as I do that, the results improve, which I'm just going to go over in a second. So as you can imagine, the higher levels of consciousness are surrounded by emotions like courage and neutrality. Those are when you start getting into the higher levels. Things like willingness, acceptance, wisdom, love, peace, joy, and these kinds of levels. And again, we can introduce other words in there. We could say appreciation, we could say abundant. That would all be at those higher levels of consciousness. Now, the lower levels are a little different. We have things like guilt and shame, apathy, fear is a big one, anger, desire, and I'll explain a little bit more. There's a differentiating thing there with desire there, and pride. These are the lower levels of consciousness. Now, when we're talking about desire, when it comes to this consciousness scale, we're almost talking about like pedestalized desire, right? I need this thing or I won't be happy. If I don't get this thing, my life is ruined. This kind of level of desire. Now, Hawkins discovered that depending on where you are on this scale, and again, people can fluctuate. Some people will absolutely visit high levels but live mainly from lower, and vice versa. But what Hawkins discovered is that if you are in the level of courage or above, you are in what's called a low entropy state, or a life-supporting state of consciousness. Anything at 199, which is pride, or below, is in what's called a life-destroying or high entropy state of being. High entropy, or I should say entropy itself, just means breakdown. So it actually makes a lot of sense because, you know, for example, if people are very stressed, which happens as a natural byproduct of being in the lower levels of consciousness, they get diseases. You know, their bodies start breaking down. They age rapidly and faster. While people who are at higher levels of consciousness, it's the exact opposite. They usually age slower. They usually have less breakdown. They're healthier, for example, at these higher levels of consciousness. Now, you can think of these different levels of consciousness as like different frequencies or energies that you can tune into or access, and remember how the law of balance will play out in this. So if you're in fear, and that is the frequency or consciousness you're activating or dwelling in most of the time, well, then life is going to balance out to match that level of consciousness that you're at. But if you're at courage or willingness or even neutrality, acceptance or love or wisdom, then life will start balancing out to match that level of consciousness that you're at. You can think of it like you're accessing different radio stations. When you're accessing fear, you're only going to get songs that have to do with fear and match the station you're on. But if you're at a different level of consciousness like love, you're going to start getting songs that match love, and you're going to get love songs. You're going to get songs that are about love, that bring more love into your life, for example. Now, there's so much more that we could get into when it comes to the map of consciousness, but I want to give you this because it's an amazing body of work if you want to look into it further. The book is known as Power versus Force, which is an incredible book, and he'll describe, for example, each level of consciousness, what starts to show up, how that presents itself, more ways to move up the scale, which you will get in this video as well. And it's an amazing body of work to dive into and to keep revisiting time and time again. And it's even said that if you read this book, you will actually automatically jump up in levels of consciousness because your level of understanding and awareness goes up. And it's actually by quite a significant amount just by reading and engaging with this book. And this happens with other material as well. There's a thing called energetic transference. So when you expose yourself to high conscious material and you actually are open to it, you know, you're not completely resisting it, you allow your consciousness to be influenced by that. Again, that infinite action influencing your thoughts and emotions, and therefore it actually jumps you up on the consciousness map. Now, again, I want to present this because the higher you go up on this consciousness scale, and if you can stay there more often than not, or just get better at staying at the higher levels, the more you're able to control the energy in your life. Now, one other thing I want to mention is the difference between what we can call physical energy, or what we'll come to know as source energy. And this is important too, because Hawkins talks about this a little bit when it comes to power versus force. Force is kind of like an energy that you have to keep feeding, right? Force is something where if you stop giving it your attention and feeding it, it's something that dies out. Like it requires your attention to keep going. You know, this is like the hustle, the grind, like you stop to it, just dies and goes away, right? There's nothing wrong with that, but just keep in mind that's kind of what the physical energy is. It has to be refilled if it's depleted. But there's another level of energy known as what we're calling source energy. I believe Reality Transurfing also talks about this, and they call it something similar to source energy, cosmic energy. I think it is cosmic energy, actually. And the difference here is this is coming from what's known as power. This energy exists. It requires nothing from you to exist, and you simply tune into it. You cannot hold it. You cannot store it. You simply access it. So source energy is amazing because, again, you just tune yourself to be on its frequency, and then you receive all of this energy, inspiration. If you've heard of the concept of downloads, like just information out of nowhere seems to come in and you know you didn't think it, this is where that comes from too. Inspiration. You ask a lot of people who, for example, in the arts, about like, well, how did you come up with this idea or this creation or this song? And you're like, I didn't come up with it. I was inspired. It came to me, right? A lot of times it's because they're accessing this place, these frequencies that we're calling source energy. Now, how do you usually access source energy? It's when you're at higher levels of consciousness. Higher levels of consciousness help you activate that spirit part of yourself much more. You can think of it that when you're in lower levels of consciousness, that connection to source, that connection to what you are, that spirit at the highest level, that channel starts to constrict. It gets smaller and smaller and harder for you to feel what that is or connect to it. Now, it never goes away. You can never not be what you truly are, even if you're presenting yourself in something that seems so far from it. You always have connection to that, but it can be restricted or more opened of a channel. Right? It can be like a hose pipe that has a bunch of gunk in it and like little droplets are maybe getting through, versus a hose pipe where all that gunk has been cleared out and it's just flowing smoothly and easy to access and have energy come through. And so the higher your level of consciousness and the more you're working on this, the more that channel starts to open up where you can access this source energy and these frequencies more freely. It becomes more available. So I think it would behoove us, it's certainly something that we should consider when it comes to wanting to be able to direct the energy in our lives. The more that channel is open, the higher level of consciousness, the more energy is freed up for us to actually work with and play with. Now, I'm not including this in the tools, which we're about to get into, but Letting Go, which is a book that Hawkins wrote because he knew that this is something that helps you jump up the consciousness scale very easily. It's one of the most powerful practices in order to raise your consciousness. Now, we're not going to be covering that here, but I will give you a link to a video that I have done on this at the end of this one. So if you feel like you need to do some releasing or letting go work and you want to understand more of how that plays into all this, you can go over there. Again, Hawkins created this consciousness scale and then saw the benefits of letting go as well, that he created a whole other book on that topic because it is one of the most powerful, effective, and efficient ways to launch yourself up the scale. So we will give you that at the end. However, let's get into some tools now that are going to help you apply everything we've been talking about. So interspersed through this video, there are kind of tools and things you can gather on how to do this that I've already given. So I would take note of that. But now we're going to go over some very intentional things that you can do in order to help you, again, control the energy in your life more, to direct it so you're not a ship out at sea that's rudderless or has no captain or crew, or God forbid a captain and crew you didn't put there, so that you can actually direct the energy and direction of your life. Now, the first one's going to sound very simple, but it is one of the most profound and one of the most impactful, and it is to play the game of feel good now. Now, I'm going to explain exactly how to do this, and again, there will be some of you that dismiss this because it sounds too simple or doesn't sound like that could possibly be the case, and you're free to do that, but this works. I've seen it work in my clients, it works in myself. I've never seen this not work for someone who's truly diligently done it, and so if you want the results, here it is. If you don't want the results, then feel free to dismiss it. When you are genuinely feeling good, guess where you are in the consciousness scale. Do you think you're higher on the scale or lower on the consciousness scale? When you're feeling good, guess where you are when it comes to the mental and spiritual realms of yourself. Do you think you're in a higher frequency, sending out a better signal when it comes to infinite action, or a lower one? Obviously, when you're doing this, you're at higher levels of consciousness. When you're feeling good, we associate that with emotions like joy and excitement and gratitude and love and peace, all things that exist at the upper end of this scale. Again, when we say feeling good, we mean genuinely and authentically. We're not talking about pleasure-based things that could be underlying, coming from a place of pride or coming from a place of, again, that base desire or even fear. We're talking about higher levels of emotion, doing things that excite you, bring you joy, acceptance or courage, or all of these things at the higher levels, love, joy, gratitude. That's what we're talking about here. When you do this, it's drawing higher energies and frequencies to you. Feeling good attracts it. One of the most impactful things you can do is feel good now. Now, there's always a trap when I go go over this, or I've seen it myself too, is people then think, oh, I gotta feel good all of the time, and if I don't, I have failed this, and I'm gonna feel bad. And they use that as a way to victimize themselves, and now they're feeling even worse because, oh, I wasn't feeling good, what's wrong with me, why can't I get this right? So recognize, even though the aim, what we're aiming for is to feel good all the time, you're not going to be able to do that. And so instead of focusing on feeling good all the time, focus first and foremost on feeling better. So for example, if we look at that consciousness scale, if you're in fear, anger is actually an upgrade. But from there, you can quickly move to pride. From pride, you can quickly move to courage. From courage, up and up and up. And so you can do this in terms of degrees rather than trying to, in one leap and bound, go from fear to, say, love. That's actually a huge distance, and unless you're very trained in doing that, it's very hard to do. And even people who are very trained in doing that, if we were to examine it, a lot of times they are going degree by degree. They're just doing it very quickly because they're very competent at doing it. So focus on feeling better, not trying to immediately be like, I gotta drum up some love or whatever else it is. Again, the idea here is to genuinely and authentically feel this. You can't fake this. Again, you can present yourself to faking it and maybe trick some people, but you can't trick the universe, right? So we want to do this in a way that actually is practical and allows you to feel good. So that's the first thing. Focus on feeling better, because that's already a jump and improvement in consciousness. And the next thing I want you to focus on is recovery. This is not a game of, oh, if you're not feeling good 24/7, you failed. This is a game of recovery. To when you notice that you've gone to a darker place, or you've gone to a lower conscious place, to just realize it and go, oh, okay, one of the biggest things that influences my reality is how I'm feeling and how I'm thinking. You can do this for how you're thinking as well. If you notice, oh, I'm not thinking so great, reach for the next best or the best next thought you can reach for. And that might not be in a vacuum the greatest thought ever, but it's higher than the one you were currently on. You've jumped up to a slightly higher frequency. From there, you have a range and access to even higher frequencies, and you jump again and again. You're within the bandwidth and the reach of these other frequencies to the point where you can keep going up in that way to where you are genuinely in a very good place. So when it comes to feeling good now, aim to feel good as often as you can, but focus on feeling better and better and better and better in degrees, and focus on recovery. If you fall off the horse, and you don't realize at first, it's okay. Just as soon as you realize, go, oh, I fell off the horse. Let me get back on. Let me start feeling better. Now, a great way to do this is to make a feel good now list. And when you're already in a good state, so you're feeling good, make this list. The reason for it is because when you're in fear in these other places and you go to think of what's gonna help me feel good, it might be a little more difficult because you're in a place of fear, which kind of cuts you off from these other frequencies a lot of the time. But if you have a feel good now list you created when you were in a better space and go, yeah, I love this, this excites me, this is something that helps me feel better, etc., etc., you can then go to that list when you're in this moment and go, okay, I'm just going to trust this list. You got to do the work and trust the process. I'm just going to go do this thing instead of wallowing in the fear or whatever else it is. I'm going to go engage with this process. And again, you want simple things and then some not so simple things, but you want a list of things that you could do right now and maybe things that take a little more prep work. So the example I give for this is I love to, and it might sound crazy, but I love to sing and dance when I'm not feeling so good. Actually, when I'm feeling good, I like to do it too. But singing and dancing just activates something in me that helps me feel better almost immediately. And I'll sing a song I really like or a tune that gets my energy going. I'll probably move around while I'm doing it because of the principle of correspondence. And I start feeling better very, very quickly. That's something I can do pretty much in any situation, right, for the most part. If I'm in public and I don't really want to sing and dance in public, I also have noticed that just kind of thinking of the tune and kind of having it in my head will also help me, right? So there are simple things that you can do. But for example, I also really love taking ice baths, and I found that ice baths absolutely help me feel better, and there's a reason for this because it also helps you remove negative thought forms, cold therapy, but it's something that takes more prep work. So it can't be the only thing on this list, because if I need something right now to help me feel better, I can't, I'm making the ice bath, it takes me a while to fill it up, I get the ice in there, it takes about 20 or 30 minutes to go through the whole process, but you can include both. So sometimes I'm just gonna do that. But in the meantime, for example, I could be singing and dancing. In the meantime, I can do some of these other things I have in there that I know help me to feel better. So create this list when you are in a good feeling place, and then when you do drop, you will have a bunch of things you can look at and go, okay, what is the best next thing out of this that I can do to help me feel better? Again, I highly recommend you don't skip this. A lot of people will due to its simplicity, and because a lot of people will go, oh, this doesn't work, and that's fine if you want to go that route, but don't expect your results to change because because this is absolutely how the principle works. If you are not feeling good, if you're feeling crappy all the time, you're just going to keep creating that in your life. And so this allows you throughout the day to continually build momentum in feeling good and to be at those higher levels of consciousness. Now, again, one way to do this is to have a habit of waking up throughout the day. Again, a lot of people are sleeping awake, as a mentor of mine would say. They're unconscious as they're moving through the day. And when you're unconscious, you're still thinking, you're still visualizing, and you're still feeling. But you're not connected to what you're feeling and thinking. It's just playing like this tape that keeps playing over and over again. It's said that we have about 90 to 95% the same thoughts and feelings day in and day out. And that we have about 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day. And so if you are conditioned and programmed to think negatively and you don't do something about it, then 90 to 95% of your day, you can almost guarantee you're having the same negative thoughts or similar negative thoughts day in and day out. And so if we want to change this, we need to constantly kind of pinch ourselves and wake up and take a step back and consciously choose the thoughts we want to entertain or create, and also the feelings, right? The Feel Good Now practice helps with the feelings. Now you want to start monitoring your thoughts. Taking that step back throughout the day. Now, simple ways to do this, if you really want to do this, is set alarms on your phone for every hour. And check in on that hour, take a few minutes when it happens and check in with yourself, audit yourself, take stock of what you're thinking. If you do not enjoy what you're thinking and realizing you're going into a negative space, again, for a few minutes, start gently redirecting your thoughts in a different direction. Do a Feel Good Now practice. This might seem tedious, this might seem repetitive, but it is through doing that you're going to create the unconscious programming where these 60 to 80,000 thoughts a day that you're going to be having are now more automatically going in a direction that's going to benefit you rather than harm you. And again, you don't need to do this every hour, just anytime you notice a thought that you don't want recreated in your life, something that's more negative, or you're feeling. You can use that, again, as Abraham Hicks says, as your emotional guidance system. It's there kind of telling you, hey, you're in a negative place. You're not going towards what you want. In fact, you're going towards what you don't want. It's trying to tell you that. You have these thoughts showing up, use that as feedback, take a step back, and then choose differently. Now, this next one is going to be more of a deliberate practice. Those two other ones are ones that you're doing throughout the day. This next one is one where you're going to sit down and do it. Now, this one you can also do throughout the day, and I recommend that you do, but it's one that, again, it's kind of more of a deliberate practice. And this is one that's going to help you tap into source energy, which we were talking about earlier. Essentially, this is going to help you tap into those higher frequencies, those higher levels of consciousness, and kind of bring that into yourself and then start moving from that energy, tapping into that power energy that we were talking about that is just there available to you if you tune into it. Now, this is simply called activating your energy field or your torus, and it can be done through a very simple meditation. Now, I'm actually going to create and send out a guided meditation of this, so me walking you through it to my email list, which is the second link in my description here if you would like access to the audio. I'll explain kind of how you can do this, but it can be very useful to have that guided audio track in the beginning so you can just follow along and activate this for yourself. So if that's something you're interested in, you can check that out down below. Essentially with this, you're going to be in a comfortable position. You can be sitting, you can also be standing. I wouldn't be lying down because it will make it very hard to visualize this and connect to this. But what you're essentially going to do is bring the energy, and you're going to visualize this. When you visualize something, you are activating it. It is something that's now in process and something that you're bringing up. This is why visualization is so powerful. So all you need to do is visualize this. You might not feel it at first. As you get better at it, you will start feeling it because, again, there's correspondence. But again, if your channel is very constricted, like I mentioned, you're not used to activating that, then you might not get the feeling right away. But as you keep doing it, it opens it up to the point where you're going to be able to feel it almost all the time. But you're essentially going to draw energy and see it coming through your body out the top of your head, shooting it up. And then you're going to see it coming back down through the top of your head, kind of out the bottom of your feet. And when you do this, and you're going to be breathing as you're doing this, you're going to be very much connecting to the moment and seeing this, you're going to see both of these streams of light or energy kind of form this fountain pattern around you, kind of this field or almost like egg shape around you, this energy. You're going to connect to this, you're going to amplify this, you're going to see that energy strengthening and strengthening and strengthening and continue to amplify this energy. And when you're doing this, you're very much connecting to a real thing that's there. You may not be able to see it, but again, once you get good good at this, you will be able to sense it. And you'll be sat there like, oh, okay, there really is something, I can feel this. Like there's really something that's happening here. And it will almost always feel like this, almost like electric feeling. It's very exciting. It's very powerful as well, this feeling that you'll have here. And through doing this, again, you are connecting to a higher power source that needs nothing from you, by the way. It only needs you to connect to it if you want to access it. And when you do this, you allow yourself to take this energy into what you're doing. You allow yourself to connect to this higher channel of energy, which then with it comes different ideas. Again, different music because you're on a different station in the form of different events, different people, different inspired ideas. Like I mentioned earlier, there's a lot of artists, musicians, people, when you ask them, they will mention things like this. People will mention the muse, right? They'll mention inspiration a lot of times because they're activating and accessing, whether knowingly or unknowingly, these higher channels. Music's a very interesting one because through music, you can very much lift up your energy to such a point you're able to access these frequencies. There's something primal when it comes to music with us, when it comes to sound. And that's why you can listen to some music and just feel like this overwhelming joy, like you're connecting to something, right? So I feel like with musicians, a lot of times they're able to access these realms more easily when they're very immersed in their skill when it comes to this, because through music, you can get to this place a lot easier. But with this practice, you also can do it, and it allows you, again, to direct the energy where you want it to go, to access these higher levels of energy, bring them back down into your life, and then use them. So again, if you want the whole guided process of that, it's a very simple one, but you can have, and then you can use the first few times or for as long as you want to guide you through this process. Then you can join the email list down below to make sure you get that email once it is released. If you do join a little bit later and you're listening to this and you still want it, just send us a message, sign up for the list, send us a message, and we'll send it on to you. Anyway, I promised you a video that's right over here about letting go. If you really want to jump up the consciousness scale quickly, this is one of the biggest things that's going to allow you to do that. It's some of the best work you can do when it comes to being able to create your reality consciously.